So if you give your DNA to one of these websites to find out what your lineage is, what your background is, you might think you have nothing to worry about if you haven't committed a crime or if you don't think anybody in your family has committed a crime. But the problem is police might be taking sample parts of DNA evidence and matching it in incomplete profiles to your DNA, which means you or people you love could be wrongfully convicted through these kinds of techniques and sent to prison. Police recently made an arrest in the killings of 4 Idaho students, Kayleigh Clavis, Madison Mogen, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. They arrested Bryan Kohberger and has had him extradited back to Pennsylvania. Now, that's all well and good. We hope that this brings some answers for the families, but the way that they made this arrest is highly questionable, and I think it's why nobody should ever use services like 23andMe or Ancestry.com. Let me explain. Many people think in our criminal justice system that DNA is absolutely everywhere and that it's 100% fail-proof, but really nothing could be further from the truth. In actuality, DNA evidence is only ever present in about 10% of cases or less. And when it is present, the misapplication of it has led to at least 45% of the wrongful convictions that we've discovered thus far. Here's why. First and foremost, I hate to be the one to break this to you in case you were born yesterday, but police and prosecutors don't always act ethically. In fact, sometimes they lie to get convictions. The lab techs and forensic labs that work for them, often even being paid by the prosecutor's office and even being paid based on the number of convictions that they help prosecutors get, all of those have been found to lie as well. We've seen numerous cases where they have misrepresented evidence, overstated how concrete it is, and gotten people wrongfully convicted. Secondarily, aside from just outright corruption, you also have human hubris and fallibility. A lot of things that were once considered to be DNA evidence are now considered absolute junk science. Things like microscopic hair analysis, ballistic missile testing, bite mark evidence, the list goes on. And what happens when we discover that those things are junk science? Do we go and get everybody out of jail that was convicted using those techniques? No. They're still sitting there hoping that maybe they can afford an attorney or get a second shot to plead their case. On top of this, you also just have basic contamination in the labs. There have been numerous instances from places as far as Texas to North Carolina where we have found issues within the labs where things get contaminated and basically lead to wrongful convictions. In Harris County, home to the most death penalty cases in Texas actually, independent reviews found hundreds of cases where incompetence, lack of guidance and resources, and even intentional bias contributed to mistakes. The problems range from not running proper scientific controls to inconsistencies between the lab report and what was said in court to a lack of independent reviews or even access to the results before court for the defense. All of those are highly problematic, and they don't just happen in Harris County. Similar problems have been discovered in labs ranging all the way from Washington to North Carolina. In Virginia, an independent lab even found contradicting results in the samples used to send a man to the death chamber. On top of that, there's also a problem with the methodology some of these labs use. They don't always have enough DNA evidence to actually get a full profile to make the claims that they're making. In fact, they found that even in DNA typing, which is the discipline based on human genetics and long held out as the superior tool in forensics, there are flaws. The problem in this area is not with the science itself, but actually in how we use it. When it was first developed, the technique involved side-by-side comparison tests, a complete sizable portion, which would be like blood from the crime scene, next to another complete sizable sample, which would be like blood directly taken from the suspect. But now, labs are using other methods of extraction to pull even the tiniest fragments of DNA from objects, say like a smeared thumbprint or so-called touch DNA, and then they use these incomplete DNA profiles to make matches. So if you give your DNA to one of these websites to find out what your lineage is, what your background is, you might think you have nothing to worry about if you haven't committed a crime or if you don't think anybody in your family has committed a crime. But the problem is police might be taking sample parts of DNA evidence and matching it in incomplete profiles to your DNA, which means you or people you love could be wrongfully convicted through these kinds of techniques and sent to prison. And it would be really naive to think that that would be simply rectified. There are many people currently sitting in our jails and prisons who have been wrongfully convicted based off this kind of junk DNA science. As a whole, this is why the Bill of Rights still matters. We want to see more crime solved. Police are very bad at solving crimes. They currently solve less than 50% of homicides and far less than 50% of other crimes. But while DNA evidence can be a tool and hopefully helping them to solve and prevent more crimes, there's no excuse for taking these kinds of shortcuts around the basic Bill of Rights. It is imperative that police must actually have enough evidence to get a direct warrant in order to obtain somebody's DNA and to ensure that we don't have more wrongful convictions. So while I'm happy to see some movement in this case, I don't like where this is heading. I think everybody should be very concerned with this kind of infringement on our basic civil liberties. And I think as a whole, this is the greater threat to society. I'm Hannah Cox with Base Politics. If you like this video, leave me a comment. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. And until next time, stay based.